Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to week 2 of remote learning. Hope you're all doing well as you can do given the circumstances we're under here. And hopefully now that we're into our second week, we can start to get into a bit of a routine here with these videos and, kind of normalize things to the extent we can. Before you watch this video, please read that Hunter Boots article that I included in my email. I am going to reference that at the end of the video today. And we'll start the way we always do with a look at what we have upcoming. The Chapter 9 quiz. It's going to be due this Friday at midnight. Obviously, we'll start Chapter 9 today and we'll finish it on Wednesday. And then secondly, the marketing strategy for the business plan is the next interim submission you have due. And that's next Wednesday, April 8th. And, of course, today and Wednesday we'll be going over marketing. So we'll be touching on a number of the things that you'll have to submit. So that brings us to this chapter. And it's kind of a fun chapter. I know a number of you are interested in marketing, so this is the chapter for you. For those of you that may be following along with the book, I moved 2 sections that were in this chapter and moved them into Chapter 10. That's a section on the product life cycle and a section on the external marketing environment and consumer behavior. It was just a better fit in Chapter 10, and Chapter 10 kind of a short chapter. This is a bit of a long chapter, so it just evened things out a little bit. So with that, let's take a look at what our learning objectives are for this chapter. So today we are going to cover what's on the left-hand side here, all the way up to branding and understanding branding strategies. And then on Wednesday, we'll cover the items over here on the right-hand side of the learning objectives. And of course, these are online, our PowerPoint slides in Blackboard. So with that, let's get started. And what is marketing? So the top bullet there is a definition of what marketing is. Kind of a long definition, but this is a definition from the American Marketing Association. So they would know. That's their logo, by the way, the graphic there of the American Marketing Association. Kind of a cool logo. And I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to answer this question. What word is on this slide more than any other word? Take a look. What word is on this slide more than any other word? And if you said customer, well done, because that's the right answer, customer. So why is that? Well, if the purpose of business is to create and keep a customer, then the purpose of marketing is the same. We've got to create and keep customers. And that's important to keep in mind if you're in a marketing department or you're working on marketing. Because it can get very easy in marketing, because it is kind of fun, whether it's when you're working on advertising, social media, events, to kind of get caught up in the fun stuff and not really focus on, hey, what's the purpose of this? And the purpose is ultimately to create and keep customers. So important to keep that in mind. The marketing concept, what is it? Well, you find out what your customers need, then you develop products to meet those needs. And you got to engage everyone in those efforts to make sure they're all working together to satisfy your customers. So that's going to bring up a question, and I want you to think through this. Let's say you have your own business, and you've got 10 people in the business. How many of them are in your sales department? Okay, you have a number? Now, you've got a business, and there's 25 people in your business. How many of them are in your sales department? Do you have a number? Last question. You have 1,000 people in your business. How many of them are in your sales department? Do you have a number? Well, the answer is all the same, because I'm hoping your answer was all of them are in the sales department. That's the mindset I want you to have as marketers and as managers. Everybody is in the sales department. Let's think of Montgomery College. Are professors in the sales department? Absolutely. If you don't like your professors or any of your professors, are you going to stay at Montgomery College? How about the administration? Are they in the sales department? Absolutely. They're the leaders. You want to be able to follow them. Library staff, your counselors, the financial aid people, are they in the sales department? They're all in the sales department because what they do matters, and if you like them, you're much more likely to stay at Montgomery College. Everyone is in the sales department. Similarly with my business, was the receptionist in the sales department? Absolutely. First person people see when they come in or talk to on the phone. The accounting people, were they? Absolutely. People want to have the correct invoices. When they're paying something, they want the right answers. How about the engineers that were working in the building? Are they in the sales department? Absolutely. All the tenants and the people in the building, the face of our organization in many cases is those engineers. So again, that's the mindset I want you to have. Everyone is in the sales department. And I want you to start with an analysis of your customer needs, take a look at that final bullet, and work backward to offer products that fulfill them. That's what businesses do. First, you look at what the customers need. It's what Amazon did. I'm going to show you a sketch of a napkin that Jeff Bezos put together, or a napkin sketch, that summed up the Amazon business strategy. And here it is. The famous Jeff Bezos napkin sketch. He was able to summarize the entire business strategy of Amazon on the back of a napkin. And let me kind of walk through this with you. He said, you know what? The most important thing is the customer experience. It's the only thing with two arrows going to it. What do customers want? Well, they want low prices, right? How do we get low prices? If our costs are lower than other of our competitors, then we can have lower prices. What else do customers want? They want selection. They want to have the ability to choose from a lot of different things. How do we get that? Well, we need to attract a lot of sellers. How do we get that? Well, we need to have a lot of buyers. Buyers traffic. If there's a lot of buyers, there'll be a lot of sellers, right? So how do we get a lot of buyers? We got to make the customer experience as good as it can be. If customers are happy and satisfied, they'll show up. And if the customers are happy and we have a lot of customers, we're going to grow, which means we can have lower costs because we'll be efficient, which means we can have lower prices, which means we'll have happy customers, which means with a lot of customers, we'll have a lot of sellers, which means we'll have a lot of selection, which means we'll have more customers, and it just keeps going. So that's essentially the Amazon business model on the back of a napkin. And it all starts with customers. Customers. So, let's talk about different types of marketing. Because one of the most fun is what we're going to talk about next. And that is guerrilla marketing. Take a look at some of these pictures. I'm going to give you a few seconds to take a look at them. What do you think when you see these pictures? Cool, clever, right? A definition of guerrilla marketing is they are innovative, low-cost marketing efforts designed to get consumers' attention in unusual ways. I'm going to repeat that. Innovative, low-cost marketing efforts that are designed to get consumers' attention in unusual ways. And those four pictures, it's exactly what they do. Why do you think it's called guerrilla marketing? Now, I'm not talking about the monkey. I'm talking about the term guerrilla. Where have you heard that term before? I'm guessing you're thinking guerrilla warfare, right? It's a similar concept, a similar use of that term guerrilla. Because what is guerrilla warfare? It's things like hit and run, ambushes, sabotage, raids. It's things like that. And who uses guerrilla warfare? It's typically armies and nations that are outnumbered and outgunned because they can't compete head to head. You can't compete on the battlefield 1-to-1 because you are outnumbered. So your only option is to do things like hit and run, ambushes, sabotage, and raids. Your only option is to engage in guerrilla warfare. And similarly, as small startup businesses, that's really the province of guerrilla marketing. You are not going to have the funds or the resources of big companies. And so guerrilla marketing is perfect for startups. It's cheap and you get a ton of bang for your buck. All of these ideas, easy to go viral, right? Because they're cool and clever. And big companies are aware of this, and so they're thinking, hey, we can't just let the small companies do it, we should do it too. Which is why on this slide you see McDonald's, Nestle, Jeep, all big companies, all use guerrilla marketing. I'm going to show you a couple of other examples of guerrilla marketing. Again, I'll give you a few seconds to take a look through these. And because I really appreciate creativity, I'm going to show you one last slide of guerrilla marketing and give you a few seconds to look through that as well. So again, what do you think of when you see these types of images? Clever, creative, viral, social media, great idea, fun, cheap. All those things come under the heading of guerrilla marketing. And it's required for your business plans to come up with a guerrilla marketing strategy. So you have plenty of time to come up with something creative. So get together with your groups and come up with something good. Okay. So let's talk about marketing strategy and how we develop a marketing strategy. Well, it's a two-step process. First, you're going to select your target market, and then you're going to develop a marketing mix that'll help you reach that target market. So we're going to start by talking about your target market, identifying who that target market is. And initially, you're going to determine if you're going to sell to consumers, such as yourselves, or to businesses, which is also known as the industrial market, industrial or business market, or if you're going to sell to consumers and businesses. Once you make that determination, you're then going to segment or divide your market. And we're going to talk about how you do both of those things. So let's start with how you identify your target market in the first place. Well, let's start with, what is a target market? There is a pretty good definition of a target market. It's the group of consumers who should be particularly interested in your product, who have access to it and the means to buy it. So let's break that down a little bit, starting with the definition. Who have access to it and the means to buy it. So let's say you're going to appeal to students. You have to make it even more narrow than that, because not all students will have access to it. If you have a shop in Rockville, Maryland, students in Omaha, Nebraska, or Los Angeles, they don't have access to it. So you're going to need to narrow it. So not just students, but what specific type of students have access to it. Secondly, and who have the means to buy it. Let's say you make children's books for kids ages 4 to 10. Is that your target market? Do they have the means to buy it? Who's really your target market if you're selling books for kids ages 4 to 10? Parents, grandparents, teachers, schools, libraries. Sure, you want the kids to be interested because they can influence all those other parties, but it's also those parties that's your target market because they have the means to buy your product. Particularly interested, that is in italics. The group of consumers who should be particularly interested. That brings up a question. Why not just target everyone? Why not just target everyone? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Reason number one, because you can't afford it. It costs a lot to do that, and you'd end up targeting people who have no or very limited interest in your product. Secondly, if you cater to everyone, you stand for no one. It's very hard to be all things to all people, and you want to have your product appeal to some group specifically that you can go after. Third, and most importantly, one message is not going to resonate with everybody. Think about McDonald's. I like McDonald's. You probably like McDonald's. Guess what? If McDonald's wants to reach us, it's very likely that the television shows we watch, the streaming we do, the radio stations we listen to in the car, the websites we visit, the social media we use, what we read, where we go, it's all different. What you do and what I do is going to be completely different. So McDonald's understands that, they realize that, and they're going to try to reach us in different ways. Cars, another example. Cars, you would think that's pretty universal. Everybody who's old enough wants a car. But break it down. Why do people want cars? Lots of different reasons. Some people say, hey, I want something that's cool or fast or sleek. Others would say, I just want something that's safe. Take care of my kids. Others could think, I want something that has a good value that's inexpensive. Others, I want something that's a status symbol. Others, I want something that's green, I want an electric car. Others, I want something that's rugged that I can haul. Yes, people want cars, but there's all sorts of different reasons why. And so car makers are going to come up with different target markets to appeal to each of those markets. So I'm going to show you a very short video. It's only 2 minutes, and it does a nice job of talking about why you want to define target markets, and it's geared specifically to new entrepreneurs, which is why I wanted to reference it.
Hey everyone, this is Jason Long with Brainleaf, and today's thing of the day is going to be about finding focus within your target market, or defining a target market. What a lot of new entrepreneurs do is they want to try to do everything or sell something to everyone, and they don't want to narrowly define a specific target market. And I'm going to tell you the secret about why you have to do this. This is it. When you define a really, really clear target market, you know who to sell to. You can create a call list. So, for example, if I'm selling videos to people online, and I know that I'm only selling to a certain kind of business that does a certain kind of thing, that has a certain number of people, that makes a certain amount of money, I can go out on LinkedIn. I can go online, or I can go on LinkedIn. I can buy a list. I can do all sorts of things to say I'm just looking for this really narrow targeted list. And usually, almost always, that narrow targeted list is really not so narrow. You're not talking 10 businesses. You're usually talking thousands of businesses. But now you have a multi-thousand business target list. You can get on the phone with those people and know exactly what to say, exactly how to say it, exactly what they're going to react to, and you can target it so well. But if you just have a broad focus and you're just kind of doing everything for everyone, or you're trying to sell a particular service or product to everyone, who are you going to call? Who are you going to sell it to? You don't know, and there's no way to put together a list. So the trick is be very, very, very specific as you can. Narrow that list down, and instead of cutting off sales channels, you're actually opening sales channels. So that's it. That's today's thing of the day. Thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. Have a great day.
And so I thought he did a pretty good job there. I just like the way he's focusing on, by narrowing your target market, you're actually expanding your audience. By narrowing it, you're expanding because you're making it more specific, the people you have to go after. It actually makes it easier to go after them. It opens up your marketing options. Okay, so the types of markets, you have to determine if you're going to sell to consumers, which is obviously people like you who buy a product for personal use, or if you're going to sell to businesses or the industrial market. So consumers, B2C, and businesses, B2B. You could do both. Groups like Nike, Marriott, Capital One, Apple, they sell to both. They have consumers and businesses. So you can do one, the other, or both. And let's talk about how we do that. So we're going to segment the market. We've now identified who our target market is. How do we segment that market? Well, there's 4 main ways you can do that. And certainly the first 2 is something that you'll be doing with your businesses. Geographic. Think about your businesses for your business plans. Are you going to sell just to people in Rockville? In all Montgomery County? The entire DMV? Are you going to be online so you'll reach people all over the place? You need to know what that is, because how you're going to promote your product, it's going to depend on what your answer is to how big your geography is. So all of you are going to have to segment your market geographically. How big is it? Demographically, you'll probably have to do the same thing. What's the age groups that you're going to be looking for? Does gender make a difference? Does income make a difference? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. If you're, say, Marriott, we use them as an example, income certainly matters. That's why they have so many different brands. The people that are going to stay at the Ritz-Carlton, the St. Regis, the W, are probably not the same people that are going to stay at the Fairfield Inn, Spring Hill Suites, or Courtyard. They're all Marriott brands, but they segment their markets in a number of different ways, which includes by income, something you'll need to think about. Psychographic, lifestyles, interests, activities, values. Cars is kind of an example of that. Some people like luxury cars, some people like practical cars, some people like safe cars, some people like environmentally friendly cars. That's all segmented by psychographic. Food's another example. Organic food, nutritional food, ready-to-eat food, diet, all segmented by psychographic. Behavioral, based on a buyer's relationship. What does that mean? Based on the buyer's relationship. Well, they're really talking about your usage or your loyalty to the brand. For example, if you have a rewards card at a Starbucks or one of your favorite restaurants, you're going to be marketed to differently than someone without a rewards card because you have some loyalty and you have a lot of usage of that product. We had something in my business called a customer pyramid, where the customers that were on the top of the pyramid, they bought a lot of our services. The people on the bottom, they bought some, but not nearly as much. And while we want to treat all customers well, boy, the people on the top that bought a lot of our services, that made up a lot of our income, we really needed to treat them well. So we would segment our customers behaviorally that way. And since this is the political season, that's really a great example. Because, boy, you think in politics, you want to appeal to everybody. Whoever gets the most votes wins. So forget about target markets. We got to appeal to everybody in order to win. But that is absolutely not the case in politics. You've got to know your different groups that are likely to support you and how to reach them. If you're a Republican, you might think, hey, these groups are pro-life. How do we reach them? These groups are pro-business. How do we reach them? Libertarians. How do we reach them? Religious voters. How do we reach them? They might all tend to vote Republican, not necessarily, but tend to, but you reach them all in different ways. Democrats, the same thing. Might be pro-choice. You might focus on the environment or gun control. Again, you might tend to vote Democrat, not necessarily, but all those groups are reached in different ways. So even for something like politics, where you think, there's no need for a target market, there are individual target markets. Develop your marketing mix. Okay, so just to remind you where we are, I'm going to go back a couple of slides and say, okay, so now we've talked about the target market, how to identify it, how to segment it. Now we have to develop a marketing mix that will allow us to reach that target market. And the marketing mix, we're going to use the 4 P's to help us remember it. Product, we have to develop a product that meets the needs of the target market. That's what we're going to talk about today. Wednesday, we'll talk about price and place and promotion, determining how to come up with those to reach the target market. So let's start with the product, the first P. So we know we want to work backward from what the customer wants. So how do we determine what our customers want? Well, one way to do that is to conduct market research. And there's secondary data and there's primary data. And you'll have to use both of these in your business plan. It's a requirement. So secondary data is just that. It's data that's already been collected. So it could be from the Census Bureau, whatever you find online, things like that. Primary data is data that you get yourself. You might conduct surveys. You might interview people. You might do focus groups. You might go to a site and take a look at how things are going at their site. All sorts of different ways to do it. Shugol Research is a company that does market research. And they're actually based in Bethesda. And I wanted to show you what a typical market research firm does. So here's Shugol Research's website. They're based right in Bethesda. And they do all those things on behalf of other companies. Focus group facilities, market research consulting, all that stuff. And for instance here, focus group. I've been at this table. And what they do is they have somebody that sits here who's a moderator. They invite a bunch of people in who are in the target market they're looking for, and we sit in these chairs. This is a two-way mirror here. They'll have people of the company that have hired them generally behind this two-way mirror to watch things, and then this person will ask us a bunch of questions and get our responses, and they'll see how we respond. So it's kind of a cool thing to do. And if you have any interest in getting involved in that and participating in their research, it's great. It's fun. And look at this says you can get paid for it. And generally speaking, they're looking for young people because so many products are targeting millennials. My son's actually in this, and every couple of weeks he'll get a call saying, hey, we're looking for someone between the ages of 19 and 24 who went to college, that's working, that drives a car, that has disposable income of whatever it is. Would you be interested? And then depending on the study, they could give you $50 for an hour, or 100 or 200 or whatever it is. So especially now with the coronavirus, if you're interested, just go to this website, click here to register. They'll ask you a million questions because when companies call them, they want a very specific target market. But then once you're in your database, they could call you and have you go in for a study. So it's kind of a neat way to make money and to learn how all this works. So a little bit about market research. Okay, branding. So you've done some research. You have a pretty good idea now what appeals to your target market, what your target market wants. Now what do? Well, you have to develop a brand, something that differentiates you from your competitors. So what is a brand? It's a name, design, symbol, or other feature that differentiates you from your competitors. Essentially, it's what people think of when they hear your company name. What do people think of when they hear your name? Well, here's Apple right here. What do you think of when you think of Apple? What words come to mind? Cool, hip, expensive, imagination, design, innovation, trendy. That's all part of the Apple brand. It's what comes to mind when you think of them. McDonald's, similarly, what comes to mind when you think of McDonald's? Convenient, tasty, consistent, quick, friendly. That is part of the McDonald's brand. It's what you, the consumers, think of the company. And so as marketers, you want to be able to position the image of your brand so that consumers perceive it a certain way. And Apple and McDonald's have done a very good job of that, because all those terms I used are probably ones that came to mind when you think of Apple and McDonald's. So positioning and brand. I wanted to show you a second video that talks a little bit more about branding and the importance of branding.
What is a brand? A brand is the difference between a pair of running shoes and a pair of Nikes. A brand is what people feel about you, your product, the service you provide, or your organization. It's part rational, but mostly emotional. People will forgive a strong brand if it makes a mistake. Remember New Coke? Likewise, people won't forgive a weak brand if it makes a mistake. Remember Gateway Computers? We thought so. So, what is the secret of a strong brand? The answer is surprisingly simple. Focus. I'll say it again. Focus. Great brands stand for something. Not a lot of things. One thing. For decades, Swedish car maker Volvo defined their brand with a single word. Safety. Well, it seemed to work for them. Sometimes you have to think beyond the category to know what you stand for. Harley-Davidson makes motorcycles. Want to guess what they stand for? Freedom. Not a more powerful engine, not a more reliable bike or a smoother ride. Freedom. Brands are experiential. Take Starbucks. They differentiate themselves in many ways and offer a consistent brand experience in every Starbucks you visit. They even have their own language. Starbucks has created a unique community of coffee lovers that speak Starbucksese and are true brand ambassadors. It doesn't get any better than that. Starbucks had realized they weren't in the business of serving coffee. They were in the business of serving people. So, can you put a monetary value on a brand? The people at Interbrand Research can. Remember the fine folks at Coca-Cola we mentioned earlier? Care to guess what their brand is worth? That's right. According to Interbrand, about 61% of the value of the Coca-Cola Corporation is brand. That's a lot of cash. Here's the monetary value of some other brands you'll be familiar with. So a brand is worth protecting and nurturing. But how? Here are a few key points to help maintain or even grow your brand. 1. Be different. The world is filled with parody products and services. Make yours stand out. 2. Be vigilant. Don't allow your brand to do things it shouldn't. Don't be the Gateway Computers of your category. 3. Be relevant. The marketplace changes constantly. Make sure your brand keeps up. So, who really owns a brand? The brand manager? The VP marketing? Brands are owned by the people. It used to be a company would tell people about their brand. It was pretty much a one-way thing. Now, it is much more of a conversation. But don't worry, this instant feedback can be very useful. It gives you a glimpse into what's in the hearts and minds of your customers and allows you to take action when you need to. It can also help you stay focused, and that's a good thing. So let's recap. A brand is much more than your logo or the color of your truck fleet. It's something intangible. It's what people think of you, but mostly on an emotional level. Great brands are focused. They stand for something. Great brands are not just seen and heard, they're experienced, and in a way that is uniquely theirs. A brand can have tremendous value and should be treated that way. Keep your brand healthy by being different, vigilant, and relevant. And finally, never forget that people, your customers, own your brand. Listen to them, respect them, most of all, earn their trust.
So pretty good job. I thought that was well done. A brand is what differentiates you. Remember, you asked the question, why us? That's how you differentiate yourself. Why us? Why should a consumer buy our product instead of our competitors? You have to be able to answer that question. What differentiates you? And then what customers think. It doesn't matter what you think. It's what's in the customer's head. That's your brand. So again, well done. So there's various branding strategies. The first two here, private and generic, they're more niche strategies. You may have heard the term private brand, generic brand, so I just wanted to detail what they are. A private brand is something like Harris Teeter soft drinks, Safeway brand peas, just a private label or a store brand, as opposed to a more standard brand name like Campbell's Soup or Kellogg's Fruit Loops. And then generic branding. You might have heard of generic drugs. They don't have a brand. They're generic. In some grocery stores, you might just see a black and white label that just lists contents. There's no brand. Generic branding. Generally cheaper because there's no advertising or marketing or promotion. Much more common, though, is manufacturer branding. And there's two types, multi-product and multi-branding. And I'm going to show you those on the next slide. So let's start with multi-product branding. And FedEx is an example of that. FedEx has a number of different services as shown here. But guess what? They're all known as FedEx. FedEx Freight, FedEx Ground, FedEx Home Delivery, FedEx everything. But it's always FedEx. Multi-product branding. Other companies, this is relatively rare, but other companies kind of have this. Think of Apple. iPhone, iPad, a lot of Apple stuff are Apple. Virtually everything Apple created is something, is Apple. Now they've bought some companies like Beats, and they've kept the name Beats, so it's not exclusive like FedEx, but most of Apple stuff is or Apple. You know it's an Apple product. Similar with Google. Google Earth, Google Maps, Google Images. Most of Google stuff comes under the heading of Google, but not everything. Google bought YouTube, and that still has separate branding. So both of those examples, Apple and Google, largely multi-product branding, but certainly not exclusively. Multi-branding, Unilever is a perfect example. And if you remember that name, it's because when we talked about Ben & Jerry's here, the hostile takeover, Unilever is the group that took over Ben & Jerry's. Well, Unilever owns all of these brands and a lot more. That is multi-branding. So, why would one company choose to do multi-product branding while another would choose multi-brand? Well, let's start with multi-product branding. Why does FedEx do that? Well, it's good if there's very similar businesses, and for FedEx there are similar businesses. It's good if you've got a strong brand. FedEx has a strong brand, and it's cheaper. It's cheaper. It's all FedEx. So that's some reasons you do it. Why wouldn't you do it, though? Well, it becomes harder to differentiate and segment your customers, what we just talked about, if everything is under a single name. It can also dilute your brand name because you see it everywhere. It's one thing for FedEx to do it, but boy, what if all these things were Unilever? They were all called Unilever. You'd be sick of it. There'd be Unilever all over the grocery store. Another problem with this system, multi-product branding, is that if there's a problem with one, it infects all of it. If there's a problem with FedEx Express, say, it's going to impact all these because all people are going to know is, oh boy, there's a problem with FedEx, and it hurts everything. So that can be a problem. And then finally, it can really stifle innovation because you're so afraid if you start something and it's bad or doesn't work that it's going to infect the other names. How about with multi-branding? Why would you do that, or why wouldn't you? Well, there's a few reasons why you would, and the most obvious is you can segment into different target markets because there's different names. Not only with Unilever, let's think of Marriott as an example. Marriott has 30 brands, and if you're at the Ritz or the W or the St. Regis, you're going to target more wealthy people. If you're at Courtyard or Fairfield or Spring Hill Suites, more economy-minded. They also have a Renaissance. They have Westin. They have Sheraton for people in the middle. So they're able to segment their brands into certain target markets. That's the main reason to use multi-branding as a strategy. You can also grow market share because there's a lot less space for competitors, right? All those brands that Marriott has, you probably had no idea they were all Marriott. There's only a few different hotel brands out there, and by taking up so many, there's a lot less space for competitors. Another good reason why you do this is if you have a problem at one, it doesn't infect the others. If there's a problem at Westin, 99% of the people don't realize, well, that's Marriott and Renaissance is the same and Sheraton's the same. They think, okay, there's a problem at Westin, I'll just stay at a Renaissance. I'll stay at a Courtyard. I'll stay at a Sheraton. It's different, even though they're all under the Marriott banner. So those are some reasons why you might do multi-branding. Why wouldn't you? Well, you can't exploit your strong brand name. Marriott's a strong brand name. You can't really take advantage of it. It's a lot more expensive to do it that way. You have to develop marketing for all those different brands. And it can be a little confusing. For Marriott, is there really that big of a difference between a Sheraton, a Westin, a Renaissance, and a Marriott? Probably not. Probably not. So, as with everything, there's some reasons to do each of these, and there's some reasons to think, maybe not. As executives and managers, you just have to weigh the positives and negatives and decide, net, what is the best decision for our brand? And with that, this brings us to the final slide of the day. Brand equity and brand loyalty. What are they? Well, brand equity is the value premium that a company generates from favorable consumer experience. Premium. What does that mean, a premium? Well, a premium is an excess over apparent worth. The excess over the apparent worth of something. And the video we just looked at referenced it. It said, you know what? You can put a dollar value on these brands. And it said Interbrand does that. And they do. Every year, Interbrand, and I'm going to pull this up, comes up with the value of some of the top brands. And here's the most recent ranking in 2009, if it comes up. Let's see. There we go, finally. The best global brands of 2019, and I bet this is no surprise. Take a look at some of those. These are the most valuable brands according to Interbrand. And they actually list a top 100 here. I'm not going to go through all of them. But I'm guessing not a lot of surprises. Apple 1, Google 2. And so they estimate how much a brand is worth. What's the premium, the excess over apparent worth? Beware democratization of a luxury brand. This is that article with the hunter boots that I sent. Probably thought I forgot about that, didn't you? I didn't. And I thought it was really a well-written article. That's why I included it. Because hunter boots really was known as a luxury product. And then they decided to sell their boots at a great discount, different type, over at Target. And what did that do? The one individual who was quoted in there said, you know what, I paid $150 for those boots, and now they're available for $40. I feel like I've been scammed, that they're not worth it anymore. Now I don't feel like they're a luxury brand anymore. And that is something you have to be careful of. A number of brands find it difficult to negotiate this balance. Mercedes, perfect example. When you think of Mercedes, you think of luxury, sophistication, expensive. But what's the cheapest Mercedes model out there now? Well, there's a Class A sedan that sells for about $34,000. Now that's getting a little tight because that's more or less the average of a regular U.S. car. And Mercedes has to be very careful about selling cars too low because it can tarnish their image and their brand. If they wanted to, could Mercedes sell a car for $25,000? Sure they could. Would people buy it? Yeah, I bet they probably would. Well, then why don't they do it? Because they're afraid it would tarnish the brand. And that's something that groups like Hunter Boots really have to think about. Because as it said in that article, once you go mass market, it becomes very hard to go back up. And if your brand is tarnished, then people won't see it as luxury anymore. They can really just destroy the whole brand. So it's something to be careful of as marketers. And then finally, brand loyalty. The tendency to shop for and buy just a specific brand. And come up with one brand that you think has brand loyalty. I bet you're thinking of Apple. Because boy, do they have brand loyalty. They were the #1 brand we just showed on that interbrand chart. And so many of you have iPhones. How many of you, when you went to get an iPhone, all you looked at was different iPhones? I bet a bunch of you, all you were considering was iPhones. Boy, talk about a strong brand. You didn't even consider something else. That's one of the reasons why Apple is such a profitable company. Brand loyalty. Think of if your brand actually becomes a verb or a noun in everyday usage. For example, Google, the #2 brand on that interbrand chart. How often do you say, just go Google it? I'm just going to go Google something. Their brand name has actually become a verb. And even if you use Bing or Yahoo or Ask or some other search engine, people say, just go Google it. Can you think of other brands that have become verbs or nouns just because they're so popular? Uber. How many times you said, we're just going to Uber there? We're going to Uber there. Whether you use Uber, Lyft, or something else, Uber. There's some other ones, though, that are older. Scotch tape, Kleenex, chapstick, Band-Aid, Frisbee, Jell-O, kitty litter, jet ski. All of those are brand names, but you probably use them interchangeably from what the product is. That means you've been doing a good job as a marketer if your brand name becomes a verb or noun. So branding, very important, something you'll be doing in your business plan, trying to develop a good brand for your product. So, with that, that is it for today. That's the first P, product, and we'll visit the other 3 Ps on Wednesday. If you have questions with anything, as always, feel free to email me. And with that, stay safe, take care, and we'll visit together on Wednesday.